Welcome to Basis 101 with Jane Williams, and this is the Children of the Universe. So Jane, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, my name is Jane Williams, and I've managed to write this rather massive book. I'm afraid it did turn out very larger than I thought. I'm finally here, Miles, in Wiltshire. You've been trying to get me down here for a long time, and probably all year since the book came out. It came out just before Christmas last year, and it's been a monumental task. I live in Worcestershire, so I've come down this morning, and where are we? Who knows? I never thought I'd end up doing this. Our journeys take us in many different ways, and I think ever since I was a child, I used to look up, and lots of people do this, I know they do, at the sky and wanting to know more about life and the universe and everything in it. And I sort of went on from there. I was never happy to just accept that this life is all that there is. There has to be more than what we're being told about. So that set me on a journey of discovery to try and dig and delve really into the meaning of life. It's been a natural secondary part of my life.
And you've been to lots of the conferences and things.
Yes,
I mean, you're
have.
quite a well-known face among the conferences.
Yes, I think it's always useful to mix with people of like minds, because otherwise you can lose your sanity, I think, over all of this. I've had a lot of psychic experiences during my life, over many decades since I was 28, and know that there are other dimensions and life after death because of those visions that I used to have and still have on occasions. It was up until I was 28 years old, life was difficult for me, and at that point I had an experience similar to what David Icke describes in most of his books, and he talks about on YouTube. A massive psychic download experience which virtually reset my button, and my life changed completely from that day forward, and I just felt different. And then I began to have these experiences, and I knew that we are not alone, and that the elements and the energies of the earth can communicate with us as well. Why wouldn't they? The earth is it's an organism in its own right, and we worry about all this climate change at the moment, but I think the earth is quite capable of looking after itself at the end of the day. So the book came about 3.5 years ago, 4 years now. I started to write it, and I took it from a course of notes that I gave a series of lectures in my hometown, trying to get people to come and talk about conspiracy theories at first. And so I based the book on those lectures and gone on from there, really. I decided to put it into 4 parts, and each part and each chapter within those parts deals with a different aspect of the same thing, and that is we have an agenda, and I think a lot more people now are waking up to it, that we're not being told about, and there's an agenda for this planet that it's quite scary.
Well, why don't we just go a little bit more into your personal experiences? What was the experience, and what are the sort of things you've actually personally experienced which are leading you to assist you in all this?
My first psychic experience was in a house I lived in Worcestershire 30 odd years ago, and the house was owned by a guy called, we'll call him Charlie. And he died in 1980, and I had met this guy. He was a friend of my father's, and he'd lived in this house his whole life, and he used to brew cider in the shed at the bottom of the garden, and we used to go down there and see him, with all his cobwebs and what have you. then he died, and we bought the house he lived in. And soon after that, I started to see him in the garden. And he would never come in the house. He would sort of twirl on the spot in this long brown coat that he always wore and a flat cap that he had. And I was thinking I was going a bit mad, really, with this. It happened more than once, probably 3 or 4 times. Later on, I made an acquaintance with one of the teachers of my children, and he was very psychic. And I asked him to come to the house to see if he could pick something up psychically in the house. And I didn't tell him what I was seeing. I just told him that I was seeing something. So he came to the house and he had no idea what he was going to see. But within a few minutes, he told me that there was an old man spinning around in the garden on one spot with this long trampish brown coat and a flat cap. And then he said that he also saw a cat, and that was our cat that had died a couple of years before. And I've never been able to pick up on animals, but I can pick up on people. So that was really a huge lesson for me, because then I knew when I had those sort of experiences, I was seeing what I thought I was seeing. And that was the first time. After that, I had quite a lot of experience with ghosts in graveyards, as you would, and also in certain houses I used to work in. And
what sort of experience, when you say you've seen ghosts, or that, what are you seeing? What are you perceiving?
Oh, they look like people, the ghosts of people that have passed on. But I have worked in houses where there's been phenomena as well. And
when you say they look like people, are they in their clothing, or
yes.
I mean, a period of they died in, or what?
No, they're in clothes. And Charlie was wearing this flat cap and this brown coat, so he always used to wear that sort of stuff. But I have had experience of poltergeist activity as well in houses that I've worked in that haven't felt very good, and I've managed to sort of ask out loud about the occupants, the invisible occupants of the house. And then this happened in one house, and soon after that, within about 3 seconds, a door slammed, an internal door slammed shut very hard, as if somebody had pushed it with their foot. And lights flicker as well sometimes when you get
What type of light? And
dimmer
are you
lights
picking up on only humans, or are there other beings or entities in the houses?
No, that's it really, on that sort of dimension. Yeah.
So what was your David Icke experience? What was the big thing which turned the corner for you?
David Icke describes it as a reset button experience, and an amazing download of information comes. And I think traditionally they call it initiation experience, and I work with that. I use that expression in my book. An initiation to dimensions and other parts of your mind that everyone has the opportunity or can tap into. It's just, I think some people work, they work to try and get this to happen, and I certainly wanted it to happen to me,
So this was a wanting experience. You did actually want it.
Yeah.
And where did that happen? What sort of part of the world was that?
Strangely enough, on the North Cornish coast.
Why strangely on the North Cornish coast?
Yeah, it's not strange really, is it?
And what area?
Oh, Tintagel, near, Tintagel on the North Coast. I go down there quite a lot. Mars, I was there last week. It's a very spiritual place, and I seem to have a lot of. I pick up a lot of energy there, and I'm not the only one. It's got a lot of atmosphere, and I like it a lot. And I go camping down there, so yes.
Oh, good. So it's a place you can relax.
Yeah, it is. And I think a lot of people are searching for things in their lives. This is why we go on holiday, because the rate of our lives at the moment is just horrendous. They've got you in the work, eat, sleep, repeat cycle. And when we get away, we want to recharge, and that certainly does it for me down there.
Wonderful. Well, we've had your experience, and it's led you to you've done public speaking, did you say?
I have. I'm not in my best comfort zone here. I'd rather be up in the middle of the night writing when it's dark and quiet. So sitting in this brightly lit studio is quite an experience for me. So I'm trying my best with this.
Well, you're doing very well.
Thank you. I suppose I've always been an alternative sort of person and a questioning sort of person. And I took 5 years medical training to become a homeopath, and that opened my eyes to a lot of things in life. There was one huge awakening happened during that time when I realised that we weren't going to get a lot of help from mainstream system to practice homeopathy. The science.
I mean, it's actively suppressed in this country, but they don't like saying the words like suppressed.
No, it is suppressed. And I also came to realise about Codex Alimentarius, which is Latin for food code, where they actively promote they chemicalise everything and outlaw nutrition.
Could you go into that? Could you into that as to what you know? What do you know about that? Yeah, you do write about this in the book.
I do, yes, it's all in the book. Homeopathy does work, scientifically proven or not, and we know that by its results. And I did some brief practice, but it's not easy. It wasn't easy, but it brought me to the conclusion that also that cancer cures are suppressed, and we've been doing quite a lot of work on that at the moment.
It's very actively suppressed right now.
Yeah. I've got a cancer chapter in my book because I think it's important that people know more than they're being told. And obviously from the homeopathic side of things, we look at nutrition and we look at lifestyle and also our emotional condition. So everything is taken into account. It's, I came out the other end of that. But it was the awakening that the medical profession weren't going to help us at all. And the fact, as you say, Miles, that it is suppressed. And I don't think there's too many practitioners around now either. So,
well, the book starts with The Children of the Universe, a book of disclosure and survival. And you've got the face of, some would say, grey. But what is it, and what do you intend to...
the alien...
what's the meaning of that?
The alien agenda is very deep and involved. The alien greys are only one species, and the planet has been hijacked by a malevolent force that is of a machine mentality, and it. I think a lot of people can see that what is controlling us is like a machine. It gets stuck in the ruts and it behaves the same way. Humans are evolving, and we're evolving into higher consciousness. This is one of the changes that's going to happen over this century. And we live in exciting times for that because, if we can raise our vibrations and our consciousness, then that's going to save us, to be honest, really. Okay, well, the book starts with the attack. It's a bit heavy to start a book with a thing like that. Yes, the attack is part one, and I have described in 6 chapters how we are under attack, and it's pretty much sums up the conspiracy theories that most of us are aware of, and I've taken each bit in as much detail as I possibly can. And the first chapter is mind control. I think a lot of people are waking up to the fact that we are mind controlled big time, to not think beyond the mainstream.
Exactly.
Matrix.
What do you know or think about mind control? There's lots of things. MK Ultra, Monarch, trauma-induced mind control. What have you described in the book on that?
I've basically sort of outlined the mind control on a simpler level. A lot of the mind control programs that the government run are secret, aren't they? And you know, we'll never get to really the bottom of it all. But it's mind control that we're taught at an early age to think a certain way, behave a certain way, and have opinions. Most of our input is from the corrupt school education we get, and the mainstream media, and what governments want us to believe. And it's sort of getting out of the ruts and questioning things. I tried to get people to look at things in a different way. And in that chapter, I've asked about, I've described the mind as a jigsaw puzzle, and it's made up of all the pieces and all the pieces of knowledge that we've got and all the experiences that we've had. And then sometimes during our life, we come across some jigsaw pieces that just won't fit into that puzzle. They feel awkward, and the consequence of that is people block it out. But once you are exposed to knowledge, you cannot unlearn. So they go away, you know, going away and finding more jigsaw puzzle pieces that are compatible with that one may help it fit into the mind puzzle piece, you know. And we could go on like this. It's like I've listed quite a few things that have been going on. The government, you know, like this terrorist idea. There are terrorists, but it's being played on.
Are you talking false flag or these actors?
Yeah, there's that.
I mean, you've used some very charged words there, which have, you know, clearly explains that you're dealing with something which is, you know, malevolent. It's bad. It's very seriously evil.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And the government's involved.
Yeah. I think once we can start to recognise our own mind control and sort it out, start to think outside the box, it sort of kind of avalanches, because once that happens, you realise that the world isn't like you first thought it was. And it's quite infectious. And this is one of the reasons why I like to go to the conferences, because I can then, you know, we can mix ideas, listen to what other people have to say. And it's a combination of things, really. My psychic experiences have backed up my book. I've gone from a state of believing into knowing, and that's a massive step forward for you know, knowing about stuff and feeling justified to write it. It's I also put a warning at the front of my book as well, and I think it's just to make people aware that reading this is going to change their mind about life, their opinions about life. The whole project leads up to the ET agenda. There's 6 chapters at the back. That's part 4, where I deal with aspects of the alien agenda. But if we go back to the first part, I had to write chapter 2 on war, genocide, massacres and invasions, because this is where a lot of the problems are in the world, obviously. I feel that
the warning is pretty serious. Please be warned before opening the pages of this book and glancing through it, concerned to be aware it may shatter illusions, etc. But also you come up with just before that, you've got the first word, an ode to Goth.
Yes.
So explain that. But Goth and God, these terms are important.
Right.
Darkness rules the night, darkness rules my life.
Yeah. I've always been a bit on the dark side.
So who wrote that?
I did.
Oh, well.
Yeah, I've always been a bit of a pessimistic person, reasons for that, and I wear black and I just feel more comfortable in black, so that's why I put that in, yeah.
And who's goth? What is your version? What's your name? What's the term goth? What does it refer to? Who are you actually talking to in that ode?
I think I put that in because when people read it, they then may get some idea of where I'm coming from. Throughout the book, I refer to goth quite a lot through the book, and there's quite a few stories running through
is
it.
goth a god or some spiritual leader or what?
No. I think it's more. It comes from German. It's German, but it's a kind of cult following, isn't it?
Middle Ages?
Yeah. They had a Gothic revival in Victorian times as well, didn't they?
I just would know about it, about costumes and rock bands, metal rock bands and stuff like that. But what are you referring to?
I'm just referring to a certain way of thinking, I think. As I said, they're pessimistic. I'm quite a pessimistic person, I've just said that. And wearing black because I feel more comfortable in black. But, yeah.
Well, you've got some very good quotes in here. I like a quote from the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, that well-known German agent, because they had something on him. He had a darker past, but why do you select these particular ones
That's a
movements?
difficult question.
The human mind is handicapped when it is confronted with this evil in the form of a global plan that is so monstrous he cannot believe it exists. Isn't that the main reasons why people don't want to know? It's just so monstrous they don't want to. That's what the conspiracy thing is.
Yes.
They don't want to hear it.
No, they don't. I think it's our mission to find out about all this stuff. It is dark stuff. The world runs on a very dark agenda, which I fully
Or rather,
expose.
the world is being run by a very...
Yes. And it's multi-leveled as well. It's not... The governments are only puppets on the stage. I think most people realise that now. Certainly far more people are beginning to realise that the government isn't in control, that there is something manipulating the whole of society and governments. And I think we've been seeing that in the last... since 9/11.
Yeah.
I think that was a massive wake-up call for a lot of people.
Do you think it's had the opposite effect, 9/11? It's woken more people up than it's meant to shut up?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Even in my hometown, which is a small market town where I live, we had a festival gathering, and I bumped into somebody who has all this knowledge as well. Somebody I didn't know. I was trying to push some leaflets for my book, and he said, I think I know all about that, and we've been communicating a bit about it. And I was quite surprised. I think lots and lots of more people are waking up now.
In what way were you surprised by that individual?
I think it's because it was in my hometown.
I mean, did he look as if he would know this stuff? Did he look normal or ordinary? And
yeah, he did. And my a neighbour in a next village, he's well into all this stuff as well. So that is the great change that's happening. We're rattling through the 21st century at an incredible speed, and there's so many things happening that are causing people to think further than they would have. And I'm not going to talk about Brexit, but the 9/11 was a massive wake-up call. And I know I've mentioned David Icke before, but he's just got a new book out called The Trigger, and he's gone into great detail about the 9/11 problem and Building 7 that fell the same day that wasn't hit by a plane. And also there was problems at the Pentagon, wasn't there? And so...
What problems are you referring to? But there was a cruise missile of some kind or what?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of different things. They were definitely engineered. to come down, weren't they? It was a massive wake-up call for me, because I knew it wasn't going to be the Middle East that had done it, really, because from day one I thought what hit me in the face was the fact that we are seeing true evil here, and the magnitude of that evil was greater than I had thought before, and I think a lot of people have thought that way as well. Yeah, so 9/11, I've written a bit about that in 2 of the chapters, and gone down the rabbit hole, certain interviews with demolition experts. I've put some of their information in and references. So the whole...
Why do you use the term down a rabbit hole? Because it's a sort of mind control trigger there, or what? Or...
No, down the rabbit hole. I think quite a few people use that to refer to how far, where does it end? This never-ending knowledge that's coming in. And I mean, I've taken years and years to assimilate all the stuff I've written about in this book. This book put into the hands of somebody who hasn't perhaps considered that kind of information about the extent the governments are controlled by an elite, and the elite are infiltrated by extraterrestrials. And that's where I wanted to take the whole project.
You talking about the David Icke thing, the reptilians and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I am.
And where do you feel that that's coming from? I mean, where from your own research?
Well, we have... we've always... These aliens have always been here. We've had loads of problems with them over the course of our existence.
Are you referring to the jinn or the fae or the ancient peoples of, millennia ago?
No, shall we talk, because it's so different. The Greys and the reptilians, and then there's the Anunnaki. I think we have to pick it off a little bit, and be a bit clearer. As we go through the book, the second part of it deals with medicine, because that's what I am trained in.
The slaughter.
Medicine.
Part 2 is the slaughter.
That's it, the slaughter.
There's also about we could talk maybe about before we leave part 1. You've got the agenda for the 21st century.
Yeah.
Agenda 21.
Yeah. Yeah, that's quite significant at the moment. Basically, they want to attach us to machines.
That's a hell of a thing to say. Explain all that. What do you know? What have you found out about that?
Well, it starts with the smartphones, and then it goes on. What they'll ultimately want to do is microchip everybody, and have the internet strapped to our heads, and this is going to change our perception. We're going to be, linked to machines, and it's going to destroy humanity. But I think the war is on consciousness. Once you're constantly wired up with stuff, you can't think straight. And the younger generations, of course, us oldies will die off, which is what they want, and who knew a life before technology came in. And the youngsters are just accept it all as second nature, and it's going to be our demise. I mean, we have a lot of threats going on at the moment. Artificial intelligence is one of them, robots is another. And we've got chemicals everywhere in our food, chemical trails in the air, nutrition's being suppressed. We're pretty much, finished, really, I think. But the agenda for the 21st century is going to take us into quite a dark future unless we wake up now and recognise where we're going and try to do something to raise awareness to stop it. The 5G rollout is another disaster, but they want to make our homes smaller and smaller. We will have restricted areas to live in, because they want to control everything. They want to control water. Well, they do. And everything will be like, they want everybody in the cities, Miles, you know, and in high-rise flats, so that it can be more easily controlled. And
that's Agenda 30. It sort of slipped from 21 to 30.
Yeah, yeah. It was purely Agenda 21 to start with, but they changed it to 2030 because people were cottoning on too much. They do that frequently. They change things around just to confuse or try to confuse people. So basically,
And then you've got the invisible iron bars of the Matrix prison as well. Silent weapons for quiet wars, the killing fields. These are all really serious things. The report from Iron Mountain and so forth. Could you go over those sections a bit, explain a wee bit more?
Yeah, the invisible iron bars of the Matrix prison is our financial system. And I've explained where that comes from. The Federal Reserve, which was set up in 1913, is completely private and independent. I think a lot of people are under the illusion that it somehow belongs to government or is linked to government. It's not. And we've got things like licenses, birth certificates, registrations, all these things, which people sort of accept because we live in a social structure, think it's a civilised thing. Well, yeah, but there is a dark side to it as well. There's the birth certificate, particularly, is interesting because it comes out of maritime admiralty law, and this, you have to think about this because it's quite difficult to explain. But there are two types of laws: common law, which is the law of the land, and the maritime admiralty law. And under maritime admiralty law, you are sort of your goods, because it comes from the ship when it docks into the, stops in the dock, and the merchandise is unloaded. What they say is, when you are birthed out of your mother's canal, you become maritime admiralty products. You're registered, and they set up a system of law that if your name is in all capital letters, it's a contract, isn't it, with this, what we call artificial entity called government, really. If it's in small or initial capitals and small letters, then it's refers to you as a natural person. And because we have this machine control, satanic actually, machine control mentality in charge of the planet, there is basically a war against nature, and they won't deal with natural things. This is why they chemicalise all the prescriptions and try and chemicalise everything. But they've set up this separate entity, and this separate entity is called your straw man. Is that clear?
Yes.
Do I need to explain?
Explain that, yes.
A bit more.
Yeah, go ahead if you feel that.
Because this is quite important, because
go for it.
We have some big clues. The ET have left clues all over the place for us.
Are you talking about tall whites, reptilians,
no, I'm talking
greys?
about the reptilians at the moment. I'm trying to sort of describe the reptilians that have infiltrated are in control of the planet, basically. And this is called your straw man. When you sign a contract with your name in capital letters, then you have signed yourself to this artificial entity that wants to control you.
Okay.
If you have your name written in initial capitals and small letters, then you're a natural person. And you'll find that your birth certificate and lots of contracts that you sign, forms that we have your name in capital letters. So with the birth certificate, what parents are doing really is legally signing their children off to the government.
Right. So in what way is that happening? But at the same time, what's so bad about all that?
They can use you for collateral for debt. You know, and I think we're
Talking about trading children.
yeah, people aren't people. They're just collateral for debt, and if push came to shove, they could loot your bank accounts and that, and all sorts of things could go wrong. I'm just trying to. I want to sort of jump in a bit with that one. The strawman is very important that we understand that. It's basically an artificial entity, and the name of it is very interesting as well, because it conjures up visions of scarecrows and things like that. So you've got this fear element all the time.
Yeah, burn people at the stake, yeah?
Yeah, they do.
If you don't agree.
Yeah. Well, they used to, didn't they? They probably will do as well. No, I wanted to go into Genesis. Can I go into Genesis?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because of
Go ahead.
the straw man, it comes up again in Genesis. This is one of the chapters in the last part of the book. I want to talk about that because the Bible, and I think we're pretty mainstream with that, or most of the versions of the Bible, have the word Lord in there in capital letters, don't they? And this is, again, connected to the strawman entity. And I think we can have a clue that the two are connected.
So what is the straw man that people talk about?
Yes, it's this artificial entity, Miles, that they've created. And it comes from, in the chapter on Genesis, if we go into the beginning of the chapter on Genesis, I've got to think through this. I've put that there are three creators in Genesis, and I'll get back to the strawman on it, but it needs a broader explanation. There's three creators in Genesis, and I think the first one, which is the first part of Genesis, covers the natural creative forces of nature. In other words, it's just nature. And if you look into your Bibles, the word G, it is referred to as God. I don't like that word at all. But it's written with a capital G and small od. So it refers to the natural person, which is nature itself. You don't get much more natural than nature, do you? The second creator is this Lord God, and that follows on. And the Lord is written in capital letters throughout the Bible. And that is the infiltrator, the infiltrating entity that we refer to as these draconian reptilians. And we've had them, they are ancient old, and we've had them they've controlled this planet since before we were even here. And I think basically what they want to do is they want to remove themselves from the natural God as described, which is sound. You know, we were formed from sound, from vibration, from consciousness. That's nature. This entity, these Draco-reptilians, have come in. There's basically a war between nature and these reptilians, and it's good and evil. And the evil wants to reject nature and set up its own entity, which is the strawman in you, and that's what they've done. What we're always looking at is a war against nature. I will mention the third creator, and I think everybody is quite familiar with Genesis 6 verse 4, where it says that the sons of God came down to the daughters of men and had children with them. And it says also at the beginning that the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and the Nephilim was mentioned in the Bible. In some Bibles, they changed it to giants, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but there were a lot of giants until quite recently.
Yeah,
But they're human. I mean, they're 2.5 meters tall
Yeah.
or more.
Yeah.
Smithsonian is suppressing that.
yeah. I understand, and we're all searching here for information. I just have been doing years of this. The Nephilim are the Anunnaki. I understand them to be giants that include the tall whites, and they look more like us.
Okay.
So we have these three.
Now, that's making you agitated in some way. Do you want to explain why?
Well, it is a very difficult subject to talk about. I've written about it and I've lived with this information for years, and I'm sort of used to it, and I do know of their existence. The tall whites particularly, I have an affinity for the tall whites.
No, it's interesting that you've mentioned that, because they were wiped out at Paradise in California, we understand, and they've been withdrawn from, they're off the table, unquote.
Oh, really?
They are off the table in a very terminal way.
At the moment?
Gone. Taken out.
Oh, that's interesting.
That happened at Paradise as part of the clear out.
Right.
With extreme intent, off the table, gone.
Gosh.
That was last year, whenever those fires happened.
How do we know that?
Informed opinion, informed sources.
Okay. What, contactees?
Their agenda was discovered as being worse than the alleged agenda of the reptilians. And
Really?
they were really known to be very, very bad news and taken out with extreme intent.
Okay. Because they did interfere with us originally, didn't they?
Well, you tell me. I was surprised when I heard that, but that was...
I mean, going back thousands and thousands of years, I don't think we can ever really know how far back, but they came down here, and we were a primitive species, very primitive species at that point, and they upgraded us.
Explain all that. How do you know that? Are you talking about the tall whites, or are you talking about the
tall
Sumerian
whites.
stuff?
Yeah, they came here. I know that the Zachariah Sitchin used to talk about Nibiru being the rogue planet that some of them came from.
His stuff's very questionable.
Yeah.
It didn't happen here, it happened elsewhere.
I believe that these tall
he
whites...
sort of hijacked the Sumerian legends and all.
Yeah. I believe that they came here from an area of the galaxy that is known as Orion's belt, Pleiades, that sort of...
This is very, very important material you're talking about now.
Yeah.
The other side of Orion, have you heard of that?
No, I must admit.
Before the fall?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
But I, with that part of the galaxy, it sort of seems to house the most human-looking type of ET. These tall whites, these Nephilim, these Anunnaki, whatever you want to refer them back to. And they came here to help to mine, basically, gold and stuff for their planet because their atmosphere needed repairing. There was a massive surge in mining, and they infiltrated the primitive species that were already on the planet, upgraded us, so that they could better mine for these ET. And then I think much later, and it's really impossible to say, with the Lord God, which I've explained with the straw man. Now these are the Draco-reptilian infiltration, where they actually, in Genesis, they tell you that there has been a modification again with us. I think we've been modified many times over the thousands of years we've been, going, because I feel the longer I live, the more I sort of see that humanity doesn't seem to fit in on this planet very well.
And what leads you to that conclusion?
It's just,
Why do we not fit in? Some people say we came from Mars, or in some great escape, some great catastrophe there.
I think it's because of our modifications over the thousands of years.
When you say modifications, are you talking about enhancements or de-enhancements?
I think they were trying to originally enhance us. I think the Anunnaki were trying to enhance us, but basically their motive was that they didn't want to do the physical work down here to mine, to do the mining they needed for their planet. But the Dracos have got an agenda, totally different agenda. They want to come here and control. They do that very well by
Now, what do you call the Dracos? Could you explain that?
They are machines. They have a machine mentality. It's almost like robotics we're talking about. They're trying to turn us into that as well. As I said earlier about the machine mentality.
Agenda 21.
Yeah.
The 2045 agenda to make us all into an avatar inside a computer matrix.
Yeah.
By 2045.
Yeah. Yeah. We've got to wake up to this. And
we're hitting 2020 here, but we're September 2019. We don't seem to have much time on this.
No. It's time's running out, I think. But it's very sort of strange, but apparently the reptilians have gone through the universe. It's not just our planet that they've interfered with. They'll probably move on and interfere with another one. They want to take over. It's this cosmic war. I refer to it as a cosmic war in the book, which is basically this war between good and evil. The one balances the other. We live in a world of duality, and we have this going on all the time. The reptilians are in the way they are, that they're in the universe. They just want to control and test nature, and this is where we get the evil from. This good and evil thing. Good is nature, but nature can have disasters happen as well. But what we're experiencing right now is an interference, a takeover of.
And this is essentially chapter 1, but also we're moving on to part 2, the slaughter. Is that where?
Yeah. Yes, there's 4 chapters in the slaughter. The medical side of it.
That's the Codex, Cancer, Psychiatry, and Other Madness.
Yeah. Psychiatry has been a tool for them to slaughter us quite a lot in the past, hasn't it? Our medical structure is not good. That's why we have all these side effects of everything.
Can you explain that? In these last 10 minutes of part 1?
Okay. Yeah, it's a distortion of nature, isn't it? To chemicalise everything. I know we're made up of chemicals, but we do respond better when we have natural remedies and work with food and nutrition properly. There was, in the cancer chapter, I expose a lot of suppressed cancer cures as well. There's quite a few of those, and just recently we've had GC-MAF.
Yeah, that's a shocking European arrest warrant. Individuals thrown into French jails for the rest of their lives while they die in a prison.
Yeah.
No charges, but they'll no proof, but they'll nail you there. They'll keep you there. That's a scandal under so-called British justice that's happening. With political prisoners in this country right now being hauled away, thrown into French jails under the European arrest warrant.
Yeah.
This is a living, real hell, and our government is participating in that crime.
Yeah.
That's my words, not yours.
No, actually GC-MAF is...
it cures cancer.
It cures cancer. It cures a lot of other things. Chronic fatigue syndrome, for example. And that is a typical example of what I've been trying to explain with the straw man, because GC-MAF comes from the human body. It's naturally comes from enzymes, I think. and it can't be
Licensed. It can't be
licensed.
copyrighted.
That's it, yeah,
And that's
licensed.
one of the reasons they don't like it, because
Yeah.
they can't.
Yeah.
But
So-
the individuals who've been doing that have been prosecuted, raided, businesses shut down, thrown in jail.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like Renee Casey as well. She was a Canadian nurse back at the beginning of the last century.
You're talking about the 1900s?
Yeah, early 1900s. I'm not
Okay.
quite sure which year she died, but when she did die, her, like time and time again, the laboratories, the clinics are raided and the evidence is burnt or taken away. Yeah.
Now, explain more about that. Well, I've heard about Rife being thrown in jail, Tesla and all that, but explain that individual, please.
Okay. There's Max Gerson as well. There are various different methods. Renee Casey, she had roots in the native tradition, Native American tradition.
Are we talking France or Canada?
Canada.
Canada. And when? Yeah, the early part of the 1900s.
Yeah, 20th century.
Oh, 20th, yeah.
Yeah, and she used to mix herbs, about 5 herbs, into a tea mixture, and that was curing cancer. And she had thousands and thousands of people being cured from cancer. And she had like everybody who comes up with any kind of cure for cancer gets slaughtered in the end. And she had a nervous breakdown, I know, but she managed to set up the clinic again, and she did it for a while, but the government moved in then, and they destroyed.
That's the French government.
Was it? It was in Canada.
In Canada, yeah.
Renee Casey was Canadian.
Yeah, French Canadian, yeah, sounds like.
Okay. Yeah, and so there's various different methods, but I have described, and this is really going what I call down the rabbit hole, you know, exposing stuff they don't want you to know. I shall carry on. It's the nature of the cancer cell itself. If we go right back and analyse this, and I think the corrupt cancer research charities industry has a lot to answer for. It's not rocket science to isolate a cancer cell and find out what it likes, what it dislikes, and ultimately what kills it. And basically, cancer cells live in an environment that supports them. If you change the environment in which they live, then they can't survive. It's like when I was in homeopathic college, one of the lecturers came in one day and he said, flies around a dustbin. Take the dustbin away, no flies. With cancer, what has been proven, they don't like to live in an over-alkaline environment. They survive in an acid environment.
In other words, a lot of the red meats and things that we're
Yes.
given and their diets make our chemistry acidic, so it encourages cancer.
Yeah, yeah. It has been said that cancer cells cannot survive when the pH goes above 8.0. You know, because we have to maintain it at 7.5. So if we can alkalise, if I got that the right way around, if we can alkalise basically our blood fluids by taking account of our diet, we can kill cancer cells off. And I'm quite passionate about this particular subject because I have a person who will remain anonymous, obviously, who I personally know in Worcestershire, and she cured herself from cancer using these methods, alkalising her blood and eating healthily, unfortunately giving up red meat, and she didn't drink anyway, you know, all the things that create acid in our system. She was very brave, is very brave, she's going strong now. It took 3 years to clear the cancer, and I can remember her phoning me the day she got the final all clear, because it must have been terribly stressful, that 3 years, not knowing whether you were going to succeed completely, although the tumour was obviously starting to shrink over that. She didn't know that she'd get the all clear. She did get the all clear. She phoned me and she was in tears and she said, I've done it and I just hope that it stays away. But she was a very determined person and very intelligent as well. You know, she worked it out for herself and very interesting to talk to. The things that can help with cancer is bicarbonate of soda, which you can buy in the supermarket, and Bragg's cider vinegar, and it has to be Bragg's because it's.
Why that? Is that a brand name or a type of cider?
It's a type of cider. It's unfiltered. It's got what we call the mother in it, which is some chemical. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I must admit, but that one it was virtually a cure-all for quite a lot of things, because as you can understand, if you alkaline your body, it's going to respond in different ways, even perhaps arthritis and rheumatism. I don't suffer from those things, so I can't give you first-hand ideas on that one, but it would make sense that if you alkaline your body, that it would change and the cancer cells go. But you do have to bring everything else in. You can't just do one thing. You need to change your diet. Preferably you need to exercise, because it's all about getting the oxygen back into the cancer cell. The cancer cell has, in a sense, just died. It likes its acid environment and it's adapted to live in that acid environment.
Yes.
And an acid environment is deoxygenated. So when you alkalize your body, the oxygen can get into the cells, and the oxygen can then, take the cancer cells out quite rapidly. So it's encouraging to have a look at this. There's lots of information out there on cancer.
Well, there's a heck of a lot, but it's not curing it.
Well, this friend of mine, she made it, and there's loads of people out there that are doing it. It's a question of educating yourself, I think, Miles, isn't it?
And where would you recommend? Okay, we've sort of got to sort of halfway through. Finally, really medicine. That's what you're really talking about there, about all that cancer stuff.
Yeah. In the medicine chapter, I have put in some positive information, because I think we need that. Well, we do. I've explained a little bit about herbalism, and I've explained very briefly how homeopathy works under the doctrine of signatures.
Are these herbs you can buy in sort of garden shops and things and plant your own?
Some of them, yeah. Yeah.
Any that would need to be obtained from other sources that would be of help?
Yes, it would. We're losing a lot of this through the chemicals that we're putting on the land, aren't we? It's chicken and egg situation, really.
I understand the agricultural industries now come up with a miracle cure, and that's more chemicals they can put into the ground, i.e. making them more money to suck in and trap the carbon dioxide in the ground.
Yeah. I mean, we are losing decent food, and that includes herbs.
And Graham Harvey, who is a specialist in agriculture, has written a number of books about it, explained all that at some of the BASIS conferences, and we hope to have Graham here to discuss that. But it's been a plan since World War II to do that very thing. Well, do you want to wrap sort of your introduction, your part one up on this? We're sort of halfway through the book as such. Sort of come up with a sort of a summary, if you can, if you want.
A summary of what I've said so
yeah,
far?
Well, just to sort of to wrap part one up on this.
Okay, because I have jumped in quite a lot here and there, haven't I? I haven't sort of talked about the book in the order that it comes.
Yeah, well, it doesn't have to be, but it's just to sort of, how do you feel at this, just to close part one?
Yes, I think I've said quite a lot, really.
Well, we can take a pause.
Yeah.
And come back for part two.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome to part two of BASIS 101, The Children of the Universe, a book of disclosure and survival with Jane Williams. Hello. won't she?
Hello,
But,
Miles, we're in part 2 now.
yeah.
Okay, I think we need to be a bit more positive this side of the
Yeah.
interview. And I had come down here with the idea of trying to raise the vibrations. We need to raise our vibrations and overcome this fear thing, which is monumental because it is stopping our evolution. And we all know that religion has been put in place to control us. It distorts the truth. And what I want to sort of say is I think the subject of witchcraft, and even saying that word, is going to freak a lot of people out, because I think it's been more demonised than the ET agenda and ETs, basically.
Well, yeah, burning people at the stake,
Yeah.
heresy, and normally women,
Yeah,
of course, the suppression of the feminine.
Yeah.
And as we have gone through going through the omega point, the feminine principle is now coming to the fore.
Yes.
So, continue.
Witchcraft has always been demonised, and I want to explain a little bit more about that. It's known as the craft of the wise, and in order to make witchcraft work, you have to become wise, and that's the whole part of the journey. There is a specific book. Let's go back a little bit further. I've spent a great deal of my time trying to find the truth about this one because I wanted to know what it was all about. As I said in part 1, I've always wanted to dig and delve into this stuff. Witchcraft is a subject, one chapter in my book, and I've separated it from paganism, which is another chapter in my book, and Satanism, which is another chapter in my book, and they are separate things. Completely separate things, and they have been demonised by the system for us to know anything about them. Satanism is how the world works, as I've already talked about opposing nature and how that.
Okay, what do you mean by Satanism? Explain that. I mean, a lot of people would say eating babies and
No.
slaughtering them and all that sort of stuff. What do you mean by that?
Satanism distorts nature, opposes nature, and when we look at the way our society is run, everything natural is distorted, isn't it? You think about it. The music has been changed as well, the standard tuning thing.
Now, you're talking about modern music or
The tuning,
pop music,
tuning frequency.
the backbeat of music.
Yeah, the tuning frequency.
As I say, there's rock but no roll anymore.
Yeah, they've destroyed that because of the frequency. Some
Explain what you mean by the frequency and what type of music are you talking about?
All sorts, Miles. It goes across the board. The tuning frequency is the tuning frequency, and it's 432 hertz. That's a natural tuning. Well, it's a tuning frequency that is. What's the word? I don't remember which word it is now. It's natural. It's the natural beneficial tuning frequency. And we can go into cymatics and patterns and water and
go in
all
there.
of that.
Go into the whole thing. Explain what you're talking about, and do look towards the other version of me over there, please.
Okay, Satanism opposes this. Well, they've changed the frequency. In fact, a Nazi general was, I think it was Joseph Goebbels, decided to change the frequency to 440 hertz instead of 432 hertz, which is still just about within that natural compatibility, but slightly distorted, and that's a typical example of Satanism. Paganism is just a general alignment with nature. We use rituals according to the time of the year and the phase of the moon, and it's a very connected with nature thing. So when you've got a government, a ruling dark force on the planet that wants to oppose nature, they're certainly not going to like you associating yourself with paganism. So that's always been demonised. But witchcraft itself is the root of the power. They definitely don't want you to know much about that. And
we were talking about that in the sense that Notre Dame, when that was burned down, it was the whole purpose of the Notre Dame Cathedral and associated connected energetic structures was to suppress the feminine, i.e. the wise women.
Yes. Traditionally, witches, as we call ourselves, were women because they were more in contact with the land, while the men were out obviously fighting each other or trying to get killed for food. So women were more involved with kitchen work and planting and sowing and things like that, and that's the reason why they were more in tune with the seasons and the changes within nature. There is not a great deal of literature out there that really deals with what I classify as very important knowledge, and this knowledge needs to come out. The witchcraft knowledge needs to come out big time now, because they have demonised that so much, and there is a reason why they've done that. It is because once you become wise with natural laws and how to use work with natural dimensions, you oppose these controllers and you've learnt their secrets, and then they have no power over you at all. Now there's one book that I picked up. It's called The Sacred Magic of Abramal in the Mage, and it's probably one of the best works for finding out how to learn about yourself and learn about magical ritual.
Okay, what's the author? Who's the author? And have you seen it? Where would you get that?
It is on the internet. I did check before I came here that it was. I have a book. It is a massive book. It's in 2 parts. Abramal in the Mage, and this was written in 1458 originally, and it was Abraham the Jew who left this information to his son Lamech. And I have quite an old book. I think it's about 100 years old, but I don't buy books for their monetary value. I seek out the information, but you can find it on the internet. And I've had quite a astute friend who has gone into the second part of this book. The first part tells you about how to change your frequency and purify yourself as a person. And the ritual purification routine is very difficult, as you can imagine. You sort of have to leave all your physical stuff behind you. Very, very deep in content. And the second part of it is once you manage to obtain what is described in this book as a dialogue with your holy guardian angel, in other words, your higher self, then you can operate in magical spheres and work with pentacles and circle work and all of that. Dr. John Dee and Edward Kelly, who were consultants, I think it was John Dee that was personal astrologer to Queen Elizabeth I in the court then.
And connected with Francis Bacon?
Yeah.
And all that?
But John Dee and Edward Kelly worked as a team, and they did a lot of ritual work, conjuring up, and you can do this. You can actually conjure, not conjure, it sounds a little bit top hat and white rabbit, but what's the word I'm after? Invoke or evoke, and there is a difference.
Okay, explain the two differences.
In ritual magic, I think a lot of people are familiar with a circle which you surround yourself in, because a circle is a portal of energy. And what you're doing is you're wanting to pull this energy through. Everything in the universe is circular. Natural things are circular. The cells, solar systems, galaxies, and the sacred shapes of geometry, it runs through the pyramids. The circle is the perfection in nature. So you surround yourself with a circle in ritual magic, and then to evoke a spirit, you would traditionally have a triangle at the northern point, approximately 3 foot away from the edge of the circle, in which you would evoke a spirit. And John Dee and Edward Kelly were doing this, and I think there's an infamous picture, a hand-drawing picture of them doing this in a church graveyard under the full moon, which isn't a very good place to do that sort of stuff. But I think it was just a drawing. Whether they did actually do it in a graveyard, I don't know. If you invoke a spirit, it means that you are taking them into your own body, into your own aura, and they can be a little bit of a job to remove if they choose to stay. So you have to know what you're doing. But I think it's very important to know about this stuff and how it works, because it empowers people. You can work with it and you will get results. And this is the whole point of the problem with humanity at the moment, is we lack love. And I want to come from the heart with this, because we need to learn to orientate our lives around the heart centre. And because the craft of the wise and learning all the secrets of nature involves elevating our physical frequency towards our higher self, everything does change. You feel different. And this is what the big change into the 5th dimension that is happening right now during the 21st century.
What do you mean by the 5th dimension? All this stuff about dimensions. What does that mean? Or vibrations? Or
yeah.
What does that mean?
Where we live on planet Earth, we are in what is called the 3rd dimension. And the 3rd dimension is materialism. It's where energy and frequency has become solid, or it's slowed into we become into this consciousness, which is a consciousness that is not, it's a 3D consciousness. There are lower astral planes and higher astral planes. The 4th dimension and the 2nd dimension are sort of transitional frequencies, where it's like I think the best way to explain this is music scales. And we're on a kind of low frequency in the material world. And then when we start to higher our frequency, then things change. And collectively, humanity are moving into the 5th dimension. And the 5th dimension is thinking a different way and embracing love into our life instead of fighting each other. And we can do this collectively, or we can do it individually. And I think, as I said earlier, there's more and more people becoming aware of the problems in the world and personally changing because of it. And in fantasy land, if everyone on the planet had a frequency in the 5th dimension, there would be no war, because we're here to learn to do no harm. In those 3 words, that's simply it. Learn to do no harm. And we're here to fix the sickness that we have in our heads. And this sickness is the way that we fight each other, cruelty, all of that. It's low dimensional stuff. Once we personally change into a frequency of love, then everything changes. I'm just going to.
You have a number of things you've written down there for this. Do you want to go through that? And also, do you want to show the book and maybe points in that?
Yes, I can hold that up.
Yeah.
We got the cover on the screen there, haven't we? Yeah. I mean, it's monumental, really, but it's not.
I mean, how did you get it published? It was a heck of a book. And who did the artwork and all that?
Yes, I did. I did choose it and design the covers. I am the publisher. This can only be obtained through me, because it has no ISBN number. Now, I had to research that. We know that the system likes to keep an eye on all the circulation of information.
You can't sell it on Amazon without an
No.
ISBN number.
No, I
And your
can't.
email address is Jane A. Williams, Daisy Chain 6666 at gmail.com. Is that spelt correctly?
Yes.
Good,
It is.
thank God for that.
Yeah, I checked before
Thank
we
God
started.
for that.
I did check that before we started, Miles. I know the 666 is a bit demonic.
Well, it's actually 2/3, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the entry point in a tetrahedron of
Yes.
energy as it intersects a sphere.
Yes,
6.66 recurring.
yes. Somebody else has got the treble 6, so I just went for it. I didn't really want to use.
It's
my
not a
name.
James Casbolt quadruple 1. The quadruple 1 being a threat to national security. Apparently, it's a code for that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, you got the quadruple 6.
I got the quadruple.
I've got 3
6.
6s in my phone number, so we're really in there now. And some people have 3 9s. So,
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to briefly? I mean, how long has it taken you to get this book made and things and published? And a lot of people have books, and then they want to try and publish them and print them. I mean, when you say,
Yeah.
do you want to talk about that briefly?
Yeah, I didn't even bother to go to a publisher with this book because I just felt that I didn't want it rejected too much, you know, and the I just didn't want to go through a publishing company. I made my mind up from day one that I was going to get it printed myself. Using a printer, book printers, I should say, not publishers. And a local company where I live did the physical stuff on laying it out and creating the cover for it.
Well, that's quite a lot of work.
Yeah, it was.
I mean,
yeah.
you talk of people sending all their stuff to China or Hong Kong, and then you've got to get the physical books back and all that.
Yeah, no, I had a local company. It wasn't without its problems. There were quite a lot of problems during the printing process, and it took, I suppose, editing it was the worst, and printing it and checking it again and again, and it took about 10 months.
Yeah, well, you do have to check these things. Once it's
Yeah.
printed, it's printed. You've
Yeah.
got to, it's not something you can say we want to change that.
No, the switch goes up, doesn't it, or down, and you let it go for printing. But yeah, I did design the cover myself, although not on a computer. I just designed it, knew what I wanted to have on it, and the printing company got the images, and we went from there. So it's not in the hands of the system totally yet, but I am in the process, not in the too far distant future, of getting a rerun of more books printed. And whether or not I should have an ISBN number on it then, I've yet to decide myself, because you have to send a book to every major library so that they know what sort of information is going on. British Library in London, Scotland, Wales, all the major countries. So they can keep an eye on things. It's the International Standard Book Number, isn't it? ISBN.
Yeah.
And they can then know what's going on. That's the whole purpose of libraries, is to control information. You try and get this book into a library, it would be like trying to get Fort Knoxmood or something,
Well, I don't know. I mean, they published John Irwin's book quite readily, but that was more of an adventure story.
Yeah.
About soldiers and things, and a lot of other things.
Yeah. I think novels are a different scenario. I have a friend who's written quite a lot of novels and children's books, and she's hopping around all over the place with local groups and that, but it's a different scenario with this kind of information because of the suppression, and it can frighten people as well. But yeah, so going back to the massive change, really we need to work on collectively, ideally raising our frequency, introducing do no harm into our lives is a massive change and transformation. And if humanity wants to save itself, really, we need to be doing this.
Well, you've got things you mentioned in the book there about scalar waves and the Bosnian Pyramid, Nikola Tesla,
Yeah.
telluric engines,
Yeah.
all these sort of stuff.
Yeah, we can talk about the Bosnian Pyramids
Yeah.
because
And that's been
that's quite.
criticised as just simply being a mountain that ended up looking like a pyramid.
Yeah, the Bosnian Pyramids. Cause
But
a whole
then we've
chapter.
had huge mud floods and things to cover things up.
Yeah.
But you're mentioning 28 kilohertz and stuff like that. And do you want to talk? There's a specific frequency. Talking about frequency.
Okay. I can talk about my chapter on pyramids. I'm not going to talk about the Egyptian ones. That's the first part of that chapter. But the second part, the Bosnian ones, were well, they're all interesting. Everything's
I
interesting.
think there's more stuff like that being found out in that part of the world.
Yeah.
Hungary, I think, or
Okay.
maybe that other country, what you call it, Hungary, yeah.
When I started to research about pyramids, and I wanted to try and find out as much as I could about them because there's an awful lot of suppressed information about these.
Now, when you say
these
suppressed information, what is being suppressed?
What we're discovering about, well, not me personally, but what we are discovering about them now. I'd like to talk about Dr. Sam Osmanagic. He leads the research into these Bosnian pyramids, and because of the technology that we've got now, we're able to measure energy coming out of these things and also in the chambers. There are 5 Bosnian pyramids. The Pyramid of the Sun, Moon, the Dragon, what's the other one? Anyway, he's named all these pyramids.
Yeah.
And he's...
in other words, there's a group of pyramids there. It's not just one...
Yeah, it's near Sarajevo, a little place called Visoko.
Yeah.
And I spoke to Sam. And
I've spoken to him. I've even taken him to the airport.
Have you?
In the car, yeah.
Okay,
Amazing, yeah.
He's an amazing person.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he'd just love to have me talk about him.
And there's lots and lots of tunnels inside,
Yeah.
and there's huge ceramic crystal, which is producing an energy field that you can measure that goes out through the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
I think it's about, is it 20 meters wide or something? Like a vertical column of energy.
Yes. And we're able to measure this now.
Because the whole point about the ceramic thing is the ceramic is compressing huge crystals inside the ceramic, way down at the bottom, and the water's very pure, and all sorts of things happening in there.
Yeah, you've read that one.
Well, I know I know about it, but it's very special. I mean, the water inside is very pure, and it's a stable temperature. It heals, all sorts of things like that.
Yeah, and the frequency inside these pyramids is compatible with our frequency.
Yeah, I mean, they're actually generating an energy beam up into the...
Yeah, I mean, he's done an enormous amount of work with these pyramids because they were, like you say, covered with trees and grass, and people for years and years just assumed they were hills. But because Dr. Sam Osmanagic has got a degree in the Mayan pyramids, he got his PhD with the Mayan, the Mayan pyramids, he sort of knew that they weren't hills, and he's started to excavate them, and he has teams of people going over there.
I mean, they're layered with a concrete. It's not the same as a built solid with rock.
Yeah. Artificial.
There's an artificial concrete.
Yeah.
That plated.
Yes.
Which is covered with soil and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, I think the Chinese have taken a bit of advice from that, and they're covering their pyramids with mud and putting trees on them now to cover them up.
Yeah, they are. Antarctica, yes. I think we knew that the Nazis had a stronghold in Antarctica.
That was before the war. They took over Queen Maud Land.
Yeah.
The Norwegian territory.
Schwabenland.
The Schwabenland, yeah.
And I think they named the ship called New Schwabenland after the area that they made a base in, and they found, reportedly, they found this underground cavern with hot springs and vegetation and everything
Well,
else.
Linda Howe has come up with an awful lot more information on that, and that's literally in the last few weeks, and we're talking September 20 or December of 2019, and the symbol of the black sun is on the buildings that go down 2 miles into the deep Antarctic through the ice.
Wow. Because I'd written this before then.
Yes.
It's, you know, the information that's coming in right now is changing things so much. I probably need an update as well soon, because you have to draw the full stop when you do, and
Yes.
you go to print and the book's out, and this sort of information is going to be changing all the time, isn't it? So basically what I want to say is that a lot of the technology that we have got now has been reverse engineered from alien craft. It's reported that there is an underground base in Antarctica that is run by ET, or ET are involved with it. Equally as much, they've got Dulce as well in America. And
all the bases in England and the Irish Sea.
Yeah. And there are craft being reverse engineered. And this is where a lot of the technology that we've got now comes from. And people have argued with me on that. They said, well, it's all the increased communication that we've got now. Well, yes,
let's argue with you. I mean, I surely you're just talking a load of rubbish. You've seen this on the newspapers, or maybe the Daily Mail reported on it. I mean, how do you know this, and what's your research based on? I mean, come on. Come on.
I know.
Human beings are important. They can make electrical devices, and they're not stupid. They don't want to reverse everything back to an alien spacecraft. So what are you talking about, Jane?
Okay, I get my information from multiple sources and cross-reference everything. You know, it's not just... Obviously, I haven't been to Antarctica. Antarctica is a very hard place to get to, and I think for that reason alone.
Well, it's in the south.
Yeah.
And it's also cold.
Yeah.
I'm being really sarcastic here, Jane.
Yeah.
I'm going to start giving you a hard time on this.
Penguins.
The penguins.
And they have a treaty, a protection treaty, that was signed in 1959, I think. And it protects Antarctica from any pollution, restrictions around people accessing it. And also, I mean, it would be idyllic if this treaty was applied to the world. And I think from that point of view, I mean, it's very hostile down there anyway, I should imagine. When they start to do that, you do wonder what they're covering up. But I found that quite an interesting project to research, because of the tremendous leap forward that we've had with technology. And it's not just communication, because we've got the internet now. Yes, the internet is amazing for now, but it's being censored rapidly. Books, I've got a library at home, and I've read them, most of them, more than once. And like with the Abramal book, that information has to be, found. We can find it on the internet now. So communication and research is a lot more easy to do now. And
well, I have to say, a lot of those magic books may have been booby-trapped. I mean, how can you trust the information in them? Tim Refat's done a lot of exposure of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, only by results, Miles.
Yeah.
I've had friends that have done this and had results. They've worked with the sigils and things in the book, and it's worked for them. And that's quite a huge step forward, isn't it?
Now, what's a sigil? I don't know what is that.
A sigil, they're like the pentacle of Mercury I've got here to try and help me get over my nerves with all of this. It's a portal of energy. It's a stamp, if you like, that a certain frequency or entity will associate with, and you can work. It's almost, let's explain, like a telephone even. Does that make sense?
Explain it a little bit more. Telephone.
Yeah. Okay. As I was going back with the ritual work and the circle, these symbols are portals, and sigils and pentacles of Mercury, which I've got here, which I want to work with, but they attract a certain energy, a certain entity, and you can use these things to bring that energy or entity down, to work with it. Does that make sense?
It does, but you're bringing in entities from some other realm. How do you
Yeah.
know they're going to be okay? And when you've finished
don't.
with them, how
Yeah.
do they go home? How do you terminate the process once it's finished or used?
That is a difficult one because
Well, you've got to be very important. We don't
it
want
is
people going
important.
out and doing
Yeah.
bits
Well,
of magic and then
yeah.
getting into trouble.
Yeah, well, the angelic realm and the demonic realm are very real. And you can use either, all according to what you want to do. And I had a friend, particularly, obviously anonymously, who managed to work in with a specific demon, and he had some money stolen from him. So it wasn't totally black magic, but he got that money back using he called on this demon and managed to expel it at the end of the day as well, because very often they're not very easy to get rid of if they want to hang
Well,
around.
exactly. I mean, if one's invited in, how do you stop this? I mean, this is serious stuff, very important.
That's why we have the ritual work, which kind of, and purification rituals. But also when your frequency changes, to be able to do this in the first place, you also know how to get rid of them. Does that make sense? Because it's like fire in the hands of the uninitiated person will burn, but if it's fire in the hands of an initiated person, it won't. It won't burn you because you won't be new to it.
Okay, well, explain initiation and what are you talking about there?
Initiation is changing, isn't it? I was talking about this, I think, in the first part of the interview. It is raising your frequency into your higher self and having a spiritual download of information at the same time, and doing no harm, raising your frequency so that you can then work with these different energies.
And
Yeah.
what do you mean by working with the energies?
Well, creating magic in your life, basically, through these portals. The system really don't want you to know this, and they don't want people even investigating, the craft.
Well, the thing is, I
why.
think if you're by mistake bring in some kind of entity from somewhere and you can't get rid of it,
that
I mean,
happens.
that's a problem. I mean, you've got even the Ouija board does that.
Yes, it does. I wouldn't personally work with that one. I think you have to know what you're doing, because if you're working with the Ouija boards, particularly, and kids can mess around with them and things like that.
Well, it's like a party trick, isn't it?
Yeah, then you can get into trouble.
What sort of trouble, and how do you solve it, and who would you go to if you get into trouble?
Well, you'd have a possession, particularly in the case of invoking something. You can pick it up in your energy body, and it gets stuck, and it can just mess your life up. It can make you mentally ill. You can have a breakdown. You might even commit suicide in extreme cases. This stuff isn't light work. It's heavy duty stuff, and you have to know what you're doing. And the Book of Abramal is a very good reference source for making it quite clear. I found it very useful for learning about this stuff, and it's all factual. It's not story, and those are the sort of books that you want to dig out, really.
I think there's a facility or a place in Frome in Somerset that does stuff like that. I think so.
Yeah.
Books, rare to get books and things.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to your book. Your book, talking about books. Really, where do you feel people would A, how do people get the book, and B, how do you feel that sort of people would really respond to it and use it? What's your aim there?
My whole aim was to take the layman off the street, and by the time they've read the book, have some idea that ET is real. Does that make sense? You know,
Are you talking ET or
extraterrestrial,
extra-dimensional thing?
all of it, yeah,
The whole
all
lot?
of it. To have some insight, because I've tried to pick the keys up, the pieces of puzzle pieces in society, try to make sense of them, put them together to create a bigger picture, which is the whole of the book, for a case for extra-dimensional existence, alien existence. And as I said before, I've worked with this for so long, this isn't feeling strange to me. It's very hard to...
In what way have you worked with it?
research, Miles. It's my life at the moment. I just like to join the dots all the time and trying to push the boundaries of disclosure, and I think that's important, and that's why we need to keep bases going, and we need to go keep these conferences going, because by meeting other people of like mind who've had experiences, specifically abductees and contactees, we need to know their information so that we can learn more.
Exactly, yes. And
That's
I wish
what we
I'd
need
be able
to
to do
do.
that, but I've been able to do that the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you think this is leading us ultimately? Where the bad guys are doing terrible things, and
But
where do you see us being able to stop that from happening?
where do you see us going?
Yes, and how do we stop what's happening?
By doing this, if we can, raising awareness. The problem is when you come into self-responsibility, and that's why the book is called The Children. The children are humanity. We are still children in our heads. We need to take on more responsibility in our lives and in our work. And the problem is, once you embark on studying all this kind of stuff, and if you have an initiation or work on initiation, raising your higher self, or thinking out of your higher self and acting your life through your higher self, then information comes in, and also the ETs will work with you. But you have to be on the same frequency as that extraterrestrial in order to see them, if you see what I mean. They are here to help. A lot of the tall, well, I've had an experience with a tall white, and I think they can pick individuals up who are ready to experience contact, and without that, I would not have been able to write that book. And it was almost like the reassurance that you get from these experiences. You know, you go into knowing, and that's a very big change in your life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, in closing, have you got anything you want to really push on this?
Well, there's so much in that book, I can't talk about it all in a short space of time.
Yeah.
But
What do you want to go through, really, if I mention a few of these names? You got the Ode and things, and it's published in 2018, and just on the warning. And what exactly was in the warning as such?
It's very brief, that one at the front. It's really part of the introduction. I probably could have lumped it into the introduction, but I've started off by saying, please be warned before reading this book. You know, it will vastly change your ideas of life, the universe, and everything in it, really.
Yeah.
If people haven't considered this sort of information before. But
well, in the closing chapter, there's things, the virus and shades of grey and Exodus.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Those three chapters.
Okay. The shades of grey is as it is. We talk about the alien greys. And they're the ones most frequently seen down here, and they're the ones that are in the children's, the big eyes and the big head and the small mouth. They're quite familiar everywhere, aren't they? I mean, children's books even have them in, I think, now. But through my research, I've come to the conclusion that these are part machine. They're biological robotics, that they were probably cross infiltrated with insects. I think maybe humans or small alien species was the whole of all of this is we are spliced between species. This is a lot of what's going on in Dulce Base. They're doing a lot of research in genetics. These aliens are very keen in genetics because they can engineer creatures, and I think, you know, to work in various environments and on various planets, and the alien greys are the ones that are most compatible here because they've been modified to be able to be in a physical reality.
Well, one of the main things about the astronauts is that if you go out of space, out of the immediate energy field zone of the Earth, the human body collapses, it dies, your energy soul leaves it, all sorts of terrible things happen, and some people claim they've seen a human being degrade substantially if you do try to get outside the relative 1,000-mile limit of this planet.
Yeah, we can't adapt in space, but robots could. And I think that's where we're going.
I mean, that's where IVF treatment was initially devised, was to create these greys here in Porton Down.
Yeah. So that chapter, Shades of Grey, describes the grey agenda and what the greys may be, you know. And
I mean, lots of people call them biological robots from all over the place.
Yes. Yeah.
And what about this thing called the virus?
Yeah, the virus was a very difficult one. We're going into the blue blood phenomena in that one. And I remember sitting in my kitchen writing this chapter and thinking, now, what is it that calls it blue blood? What's blue blood? Why do they call it blue blood? And that led me on a journey. And I think Linda Moulton Howe, she's another researcher, she's an American journalist. And
I mean, a long time, yeah.
Yeah, into all of this. And she's broadcast some information, probably lots more out there now because I can't keep up with all of it. There's so many strings of information coming out of everywhere now. But the blue blood is the reptilian blood, and the infiltration. These reptilian creatures can take over people with the royalty, and a lot of the presidents and people in power have got this blue blood, which is O rhesus negative blood, and it has a higher proportion of higher hemocyanin, which is copper. Hemoglobin is iron, and we have the iron, but we also have some hemocyanin. But the O rhesus negative blood has a higher proportion of hemocyanin, and according to and the reptilians can then infiltrate those people easier because it was more potent and more compatible with what their needs were. Phil Schneider, he was an American who got assassinated. He was into alien research. He said that there was a guy that had been working for the Pentagon for 58 years called Val Valiant Thor, and he had copper oxide for blood. So that is the connection with the virus. I called it the virus in that chapter.
Okay, well, I think that's almost enough for now. Do you want to just sort of say, and finally, what's your last wish on this?
Oh, scary moments. Probably been put through the scariest moments of my life in the last hour and a half. I hope it's made sense, and I hope, obviously, people want to read my book. So it can be obtained through me. The email address is on there, on the screen, daisychain 6666 @gmail.com. And I've been posting it all over the world. So if you email me, I have a PayPal account that can be credited, or send me a check in the post. That is my point of contact. Yeah. And
well, thank you for coming to Basis on Basis 101 and 101. We won't talk about Basis 100. But thank you, and it's a beautiful day outside this September day, and it's wonderful to see you here. And many thanks for bringing the news and your work to the public. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miles.